All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this exciting webinar event with SaveRM, Operto, and our friends at Rent Responsibly. I am Julie Koster, the Executive Director here at SaveRM, and on with us today, we have Mike from Operto. So we'll be getting started here in just a few minutes. I'm going to let folks kind of trickle in, get situated. If you need to refill a water glass, go ahead and go do that real quick and come right back. We'll get started at about 3 minutes after the hour, just to give everybody time to get ready to rock and roll. A couple of quick housekeeping items today. We are in a webinar format, so you won't be able to raise your hand or unmute yourself or anything like that. But what you can do is you can exchange questions through the Q&A box, which you will see on your little Zoom toolbar. And I'm pointing up because mine's up, but yours might be down here. So we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. If you do have any questions at any time, feel free to drop them there in the chat, and we will make sure to get to those as we are able to do so. If we can't answer them right away, we'll answer them kind of towards the end of the discussion. So hang with us. I know we have a few more folks registered, so I'm going to give them just another minute or so to join us. Looks like they're trickling in, so that's good. All right. Okay, gang. Well, we're getting close to that time. Let's get started. For those of you who are just joining us, or maybe are joining us for your first ever Lunch and Learn event with SaveRM, we're really excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming today. This is going to be a Lunch and Learn focused on technology essentials to optimize and delight guests. So let's get started, shall we? I'm Julie Koster. For those of you that don't know me, my hair looks a little different than it does in that picture. You know, post-COVID, it's always fun to cut your hair. So I am the Executive Director at the Summit Alliance of Vacation Rental Managers, which is a mouthful. So we just say SaveRM. It's a lot easier. Our agenda for the afternoon, we're going to jump into a little background on SaveRM for those of you who might not be super familiar with what it is that we do around here. And then I'll toss it over to Mike for his section of the presentation. And at the end, we'll go ahead and address those questions that you are welcome to drop in that Q&A box. If at any time you do have a question, just feel free to drop it in there and we'll get to it as soon as we're able. All right, SaveRM, here we are. We are here to make sure that the vacation rental industry in Summit County has a lot more years ahead of it than we did behind. We are here to safeguard the community. We're here to safeguard the industry. We're here to promote positive interactions between the vacation rental industry and our local community. And we are committed to balancing the needs of our community with the tourism industry, which is not an easy task. So it's something that we've really been working hard on the last few years, and we will continue to work on. Our board of directors, we actually just had a new person join us on our board. Mike Hessel at Peak Property Management just joined us about 2 months ago. So Mike, if you're on here, I'm sorry that your photo is not here, but you're with us. We know you are. So everyone else that's on here, you probably recognize from previous events with us or around town, or maybe they're your property manager. We've got Toby Babich from Breckenridge Resort Managers, Ashley Kubison from River Ridge Rentals, Mary Waldman from Summit Mountain Rentals, Tyson Horner from Summit Cove, and Abby Brown from Woodwinds. So a lot of these folks are around town frequently. You've probably seen them or know them personally already. Membership, this is always a fun topic. So SaveRM works on a rolling membership basis. So we don't just have an annual membership renewal period. Everybody can jump in and join us at any time of year. So if you haven't already joined SaveRM, or if you're wondering when your membership renews, scan that QR code, pop over to our website, check it out, and we can discuss if you're coming up for renewal, how that all works. I'd be happy to help you with that. You're always welcome to send me an email at info@saverm.org, and that comes straight to me. So I'm happy to help with anything you guys need. All right, that's about covering it for me. Mike, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to you. This is Mike Anderson from Operto, the Director of Sales Enablement. That sounds really techy, which is perfect for today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Julie, and thanks to SaveRM and the Rent Responsibly team for having us. We're super excited to chat with everybody. So let me just bring up my screen here. Okay, everyone seeing my screen?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, really excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. I would love to come down and visit some of the fine homes that you people operate down in Colorado. I love visiting Denver. I spoke at an event in Aurora, I think, a few years ago, and that was the last time I was in the area, but definitely need to come back. My partner is actually a diehard Denver Broncos fan, and I am a diehard Seattle Seahawks fan. So for any football fans in Colorado, you can understand that probably created a bit of an interesting dynamic in our house last year with Wilson going to the Broncos and Seattle having Denver's pick. But everything's cleared up now. So let me jump into kind of an introduction of who I am, who the company is, and then we'll get into the fun stuff, which is just kind of like all about how we use technology to sort of thoughtfully engage with our guests and enrich their experience and make sure they have a memorable stay. So I am Mike Anderson. I am the Director of Enablement. What does that mean? I was the 5th employee to join this company back in 2018. And now we have like somewhere north of 150. I'm kind of preempting the next slide. But basically, I've been in this company for a really long time. I've seen how our tools can be effectively leveraged. And I've transitioned into a role recently where it's basically my job to make sure that everybody gets the most out of what we have to offer. So to make sure our customers are getting the most out of our technology, to make sure our teams have all the resources that they need in order to be able to support our customers effectively. So it's kind of really connects to all the different pieces that we're talking about today in terms of like, how do you actually use this stuff in a way that's meaningful? And then in terms of Operto, we are a one-stop technology platform. We power your guest experience, your property technology, and your teams, so your maintenance, housekeeping operations. So those are kind of the 3 categories that we play in guest tech teams. It's sort of how we consider our product verticals. But at the end of the day, our goal is to enable you to deliver like a fantastic, unforgettable guest experience that makes people leave 5-star reviews and want to rebook, and to streamline and make all of your operations more efficient, and then to connect all of these pieces together in a way that's really valuable. So a little bit more about us. We're founded in 2016, like I said. We have offices around the world, although our biggest customer footprint is in the United States. We've raised over $45 million in funding. We're headed up by former CEOs and founders of Booking.com, Hotel Tonight, Airbnb. So like there's a lot of just kind of expertise in the building. And we are everything I talked about today from a technology lens. Our foundation is our people. We really, really care about customer service. So if you want to work with a company that really values their customers, Operto is definitely one to consider. So enough about us. Let's talk about making our guests happy. At the end of each day, we want every guest to be as happy as this guy. I assume everybody there is familiar with Nikola Jokic and winning the NBA title 2 nights ago. Congratulations to any Nuggets fans on the call. I'm a Raptors fan, so I know what it's like. A few years ago, we won our first title. Big celebration, super exciting. So congrats. But yeah, we want our guests to be as happy as the Joker. So how do we ensure every guest has a great experience? So we just kind of categorize this into different sections. First off, we want their experience to be seamless by providing all the information that they need, really accessible fashion, make sure their check-in process is efficient, and be ready to respond to any issues or inquiries that come up. From the actual unit level, obviously, presumably most of you are managing vacation homes, property management in terms of, you have owners that are signed up to utilize your services. There's things that they love in the units, there's things that you love in the units. You want all those units to be, perfectly staged, perfectly prepared, absolutely clean for every guest that arrives. So how do we do that so that when the guest walks in, they have a 5-star, first impression, and first impressions are so important. And then we go above and beyond to ensure that they get the most out of their stay. I mean, Colorado is such an incredible place. There's so much to do, and they're only going to spend, most guests will only spend a limited amount of time in the actual unit. And if we can get them to sort of maximize their enjoyment of their vacation or their business trip or whatever by taking into by enjoying everything that's around them, then that impacts their impression of the stay holistically and leads to better reviews. So as we look through how we apply technology thoughtfully, I thought it'd be a useful exercise to kind of progress through like the life cycle of a reservation, and explore some ways to utilize it. So Operto, we take over where your PMS leaves off. So while there are certainly ways that technology can be applied sort of in order to harness bookings and get bookings, I'm going to more talk about the part that comes after that. So the kind of steps that we look at is, you get a booking, what happens at every, stage of that journey from the moment you get that booking to the moment that that guest has checked out, and that unit is turned over and ready to receive. So there's ways that technology can be really thoughtfully applied at each stage of this journey. So as we go through this, I'm cognizant of the fact that we're probably going to have, a range of attendees on this call in terms of your own levels of, tech adoption. I've spoken to, thousands of clients over the last few years, and, some people have, the bare essentials, and some people have like really sophisticated tech stacks. So hopefully for those of you who haven't really implemented some of these tools, some of what I'm about to share will provide some value and some things you might want to consider. And for those of you who are a little bit further ahead on the tech adoption, I'll try to talk about some ways that you can actually leverage them, maybe a little bit more creatively, or different ways to get value out of them beyond simply having them. Because it's not really about just like having a piece of technology, it's about how are we actually thoughtfully using it to get the most value for our guests. So pre-arrival, right off the hop, guest expectations have skyrocketed. We know that, a guest staying in an Airbnb is expecting, a level of professionalism that would more have typically been associated with like a hotel stay or something like that. So when the guest first books, we want to reinforce their assessment that they've made the right choice. This reduces cancellation rates, gets them excited about their stay. And that's where branding and professionalism can really come in. So by leveraging technology, by putting your own custom branding, images, et cetera, on it, your own custom content, it allows you to stand out from, your competition. And if the guest is expecting just some like, maybe like a poorly formatted email and a link to like a Google Drive with like a messy PDF, like this is something that can really kind of elevate. And when we think about expectations and impressions, if we can set an expectation of like a high standard really early, then there's like a confirmation bias where the guest is going to see everything that they expect to see. So if we set a really high expectation, and then we make sure that we're delivering on it, then the guest is that much more likely to be like, wow, like what an amazing stay. So on the topic of like promoting the area and upsells, a lot of property managers leverage like physical guidebooks, and they're not really taking advantage of the opportunity to get the guests excited about their stay before they arrive, which has two benefits. One I mentioned is that it can significantly reduce cancellation rates, because somebody is they're invested in their trip, maybe they're booking something in advance. They're certain that they've made the right choice in terms of like the accommodation they're staying at. And from a property management level, or from property manager level, you can generate a lot more revenue. So I think something around 75% of upsells are often booked before the guest even arrives to the property. And whether or not your property has something that offers upsells, there are ways to promote and monetize upsells that you don't even personally offer. And you don't even have to lift a finger to do anything about it, but you'll still get revenue from it. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, we want to get all of this, exciting stuff about their stay, into their hands right away. As soon as they book, send them your guest app, send them your guest portal, whether it's Operto's or anything else, and get them excited about their stay. If you need to do digital check-ins, so depending on, different requirements or, what your homeowner's expectations are. If you need to do a digital check-in, take a security deposit. A lot of our property managers leverage a digital check-in tool to be able to tell their homeowners that they are, really following up on, responsible rent responsibly, responsible stewardship of those properties by ensuring that, they're getting good guests who are going to respect the property and take care of it. And there's a lot of things you can do from a verification level. And from a guest perspective, if these types of stuff like needs to take place, like don't send them a form they need to sign, like don't try to do a physical greeting to collect this information. Do it all digitally, make it seamless, and just sort of make that not an obstacle that needs to be taken care of before they arrive. At the check-in, this one is really obvious. It needs to be secure and seamless. I'm sure most, if not all of you, are already using smart locks. Hopefully you're not using like lock boxes, like tucked around a quarter, like hidden under a bush. We've all been there. It's a total nightmare. I've seen like 3-page instructions with images of like how to find the lockbox because it's like concealed in this really tricky place. So hopefully you are all using smart locks. And hopefully you are using uniquely generated codes for security purposes and not a static code that you change maybe like once a month or once a never. The other thing I would say is mobile keys are really fun. So when people think tech and my guests, like, okay, great, I'll get a mobile key. And it is cool to open a lock with your phone. We just have to make sure that that's not the only, you're not depending on that, because it's not going to work for 100% of your guests 100% of the time. People lose their phone, they have different levels of comfort with technology, their battery dies, and all of a sudden they can't get in. So if you can find a tool, like we have certain hardware solutions that we support that have PIN codes and mobile keys. So if you can do both, great. But if you have to pick one, PIN codes all the way. Don't try to depend on mobile keys entirely. And if you are generating static codes, talk to Operto, talk to any other number of companies in the space who can automatically generate unique codes through an integration with your PMS. And then they're automatically programmed to distribute to the guest. So it's really seamless, really hands-off, but far more secure. So another facet of the check-in experience, and this is again all about first impressions. Like I'm sure you've all been on a vacation where it was 100 degrees outside, and you're carrying your bags and you're sweaty, and you just got off a flight and a cab where the window wouldn't roll down or whatever, and you walk into the front door and you just get blasted in the face with this like beautiful, cold, temperature controlled environment, and it's amazing. And it sets up like this amazing first impression. And then, when the guest looks around, they're going to have just a rosy-eyed picture of everything that they're kind of taking in. The flip side, they walk into a space that's like super muggy and gross, or, if it's in winter and we're looking at like a ski chalet or something and it's really cold, then instead of admiring everything there is in the space and feeling great about the accommodation that they booked, they're already frustrated. They're running around like trying to find a thermostat, trying to find an AC controller to make it comfortable. So one thing that Operto does is we automate the temperature through an integration with smart thermostats to preheat or pre-cool unit down to like the perfect temperature for the guest before they arrive. And then we do intelligent setbacks after they depart to save you utility costs. One thing on the topic of delighting and optimizing your guests is, this is just a PS. Please don't try to enforce temperature limits during your guest stay. I know it's really appealing to be like, I'm going to cap the thermostat at, whatever degree you feel to be acceptable because you don't want to pay more, and just don't do it. The $2 you're going to save in energy expense is not worth, frustrating your guest. And at the end of the day, that guest leaving you, having an amazing stay and leaving you a 5-star review is going to hit your bottom line in a way more impactful way than making their experience suboptimal in order to maximize your energy efficiency. So that's just a little PSA based on kind of everything we've seen over the years. Let the guest control the temperature as they see fit, and then have optimization on sort of either side of the reservation to save on your utility bills. So on the topic of that, like lockbox instructions, like multi-page, like, find it around this corner. or those really long scrolling emails, or the drive PDFs that are just kind of like cumbersome to go through. With modern technology, like there are so many better ways to like deliver that content to your guest. Like it's like browsing Netflix. It's the difference in like browsing Netflix to find content versus like reading an alphabetical list of like 1,000 different movies you can watch from start to finish. It's all about that sort of user interface and making it accessible and making it attractive. And with modern tools like the Operto guest portal, you can embed videos of like where to park, how to get in the front door, how to use the lock. Like, not only does this make it like way easier for your guest, and they'll appreciate the convenience and the simplicity of having everything in one place, but it also like significantly reduces the number of times that they're going to pick up the phone and call you or send you a message and be like, hey, I can't find this, I can't get this. And then you're like, oh, like you should have got an email. So go back in your inbox and find one of the emails that were sent to you that had this information in it, and click on the link, and it's just like, make it as simple, make it as seamless as possible. Seems simple, but I'm still surprised how often I stay at an Airbnb or some sort of stay, and it's really convoluted. Next is, so hospitality doesn't have to be face-to-face. So a lot of short-term rental managers, vacation rental operators, they really care about putting their face on the name, and they love the ability to meet a guest in person and show them around the space and be like, this is the coffee machine, this is how you use it, like this is the closet where all of the beach supplies are in, and that's all really valuable information. And I've stayed places where there were aspects of the unit that I didn't even discover until like the morning of checkout. And I was like, shoot, like I wish I'd known that was there, and I would have like taken advantage of it. So this is one of those pieces where even if you have tools that you're using for, a guest app or guest portal or whatever, maybe this isn't something that you're doing. So it's really painful to coordinate those physical or personal greetings. If a guest is jumping off a plane, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's obviously not happening. And if they're really tired, people want to put their bags down, or they want to go get food. Like, they don't want to be walked around the unit for 20 minutes and shown everything, even if they're polite at the time, because we're all socially awkward. So one thing that you can do is like record video walkthroughs. Pull up your phone and just like walk through the unit, greeting them, show yourself on the camera, or whoever you want it to be, and give them that personal tour, but put it on their phone that they can watch whenever they want, watch way before they arrive, open at multiple points in time, and like, oh, like I think they said in the video, like how to use the washer or whatever. You can break it up into different chunks. Like, again, it's just like making the information more accessible, more palatable, and catering to what the expectation of like a modern traveler is, because times have evolved and there's just better ways to do things than there were like 10, 20 years ago. In stay. So what we really want is, whenever we go somewhere, like we want to be able to go to the best restaurants and the best beaches and the best everything, and locals know those. And oftentimes if you go on something like, TripAdvisor or Google Maps, like it's actually, you can go to like the highest rated attractions, but those tend to be the places where like everybody is going, like tourists and whatnot. And it's kind of those like hidden gems, those holes in the walls there, it's that type of stuff that only locals know. And that can really enrich your guest stay. So really recommend like providing like a curated list of what you recommend, even stuff for like essentials, like getting groceries, going for coffee, et cetera, et cetera. It can be really valuable. Typically this is in like a physical guidebook, like a 3-ring binder with like crinkly paper in it that's been opened 1,000 times. These are really kind of a pain to maintain. They're not as valuable to their guests because they can't see anything until they get there. So unless you're sending it to them digitally as well, they can't use it to plan their trip in advance. And then once their trip is started, if they're out on the go, they're on the town or whatever, and they're like, oh, like wasn't there like a guidebook, like what restaurant did they recommend, but they're not at the unit, then it's not useful to them. So a digital format, you can tie it in with Google Maps and like all these other cool things, and just like really make it like a modern experience that adds a lot of value. So back to InStay. So one of the things I mentioned off the top about upsells is there are ways to make a ton of revenue without lifting a finger. Maybe you don't have a surfboard rental or, a jet ski or whatever tour experience, but there are different programs like Viator, if you're familiar. I think it's part of TripAdvisor, where you can sign up as an affiliate, and then you can promote the tours. Like, so for example, like through the Operto guest portal, you can create like a beautiful page, like with like a video and saying like why you recommend that tour. And then, the button, the integrated URL, like links out to like your affiliate link. And then if the guest follows that, if they book that experience or anything else on the Viator website for like 30 days, you get an 8% commission. So if they're booking a tour that's like, $200 for two people, what is that? Almost $40, like right there. And you literally didn't have to do anything except like put it in your guest app, your guest portal, and have them use your link. So it's a really easy way to not only, again, provide that kind of curated, recommended experience, that personal touch, that digital hospitality, but you get, a huge kickback from it. So another thing about InStay is a lot of guests will not pick up the phone and call you. If something's wrong, they will just endure it. People, like I said, people are socially awkward, and a lot of times they will just like suffer through something and then put it in the review at the end of it. And maybe your 5-star turned to 4 stars because something was amiss that could have been easily addressed had you simply been informed. So in addition to, this is a sort of a SOP recommendation, certainly recommend like reaching out to your guests, like through a messaging platform, like what Operto offers, or through your PMS, like wherever it needs to be, like the day they check in, like, hey, how is everything? Do you have everything you need? Like, et cetera, et cetera. But then also like make it really easy for them to report issues. So like in Operto's guest portal, for example, so if you're using our guest portal, which is like a web app, the guest app, a bunch of the screenshots have shown that. And then you're also using our tool, Operto Teams, for housekeeping and maintenance automation. You can actually have a button inside of the Operto guest portal, which is like submit an issue or report a maintenance issue. And then when the guest reports that, they can upload a photo, give you a description, whatever. And then that automatically zips into your maintenance workflows. To get visibility in it, you can sign the task out so that we're like, if there's a faucet that's leaking or a light that's burned out or something, the coffee machine is broken, like whatever the case may be, like address it during your guest's stay, not after their stay. And if we can use these tools to like make it easier and less awkward for them to report something, but then a lot easier for you to have visibility and track it, make sure it's getting fixed, then it provides better outcomes for everybody. Another thing about InStay is, as we talk about like building like all of this really cool content, recommendations, tours, experiences, upsells, even just your check-in instructions, okay, that's great if you speak English, but chances are, you're not individually translating like all of your content into every different language of someone that might come visit. But modern tools have auto translation. So Operto guest portal, our guest portal has auto translation. The guests can pick their language, French, Spanish, German, whatever. And then your content will be automatically translated into their language. So if you're promoting upsells or you're providing instructions about how to use something, that's being fed to the guest in their own language so that they can take advantage of it in the exact same way that an English traveler would. So it can be really valuable. In terms of just a couple things about InStay tech to avoid, because I know that like when we talk about like technology to optimize and delight guests, like there's some things that typically come up. So one is like voice assistants, and I would just kind of like stay away from this. It's a smart residential technology. It's really not optimized for, short-term transient use cases. So like, hey, Alexa, like set an alarm for 3 a.m. 10 days from now. And all of a sudden, whoever is staying in that unit 10 days from now is going to get an alarm that goes off at 3 a.m. So just like one particular use case, it's an interesting space to keep an eye on. And I think there are some companies that are trying to optimize the tech to make it a little more usable, but right now it's kind of not super usable. Another thing is in-unit tablets. There's nothing inherently wrong with in-unit tablets, but kind of connecting to that, like a physical guidebook have to be actually in the unit to like access the information. And then, the fact that we want to send it to them like way before they arrive so that they can get excited for their stay and book things and et cetera, like it just makes way more sense to give it to them on their own phone and not restrict them to, standing in front of a certain counter once they get to the unit to use this tablet, and then it's just like another device you have to maintain, and if it gets broken, and yada yada. It's a better experience to just give it to them on their phone. Okay, so let's look at checkout. So I just realized we're over time, so let me just rip through this in about 1 minute. Guests can check out through a button. This is really more not necessarily for this guest, but it's for you and for your next guest. If you know when your guest checks out, you can prioritize the cleaning, so that can be really valuable. Service and turnover. Nothing will tank a first impression like a dirty unit or one that's not up to your standards. So use a housekeeping tool. If it's Operto Teams, great. If it's one of our competitors, great. But Excel and wall calendar and group text, like, it's only going to get you so far. So platforms that automatically schedule and give you that transparency and give you those ability to enforce those quality standards can be really impactful. Lastly, connecting all the pieces together. There's a lot of different solutions, a lot of different tech. One of the great things about Operto is we bring it all together. So, guests request an early check-in through the guest portal. You can cross-reference in Teams to, reassign in your cleaners so that you can offer that, transact payment, automatically update the access credential in the smart lock, change the energy settings, like everything ties in together. It can be really, really impactful, really beautiful. So just kind of in summary, if you're interested in working with Operto, we really are all about how do you meaningfully use technology, because it's not about just slapping something on your tech stack. It's about making it really work for your guests. So we have access technology, verification workflows, our Operto guest portal, which you've seen kind of featured quite heavily, energy management, noise monitoring, and then the housekeeping and operation piece. And the real value is tying all of this stuff together. So thank you to SafeVRM for having us. Thank you for joining. And if you want to chat to us, everybody needs a good Canadian on their team. The Denver Nuggets are the perfect example of that. That's the Maple Mamba, Jamal Murray. So if you do want to work with Operto, SafeVRM members get 25% off your first 3 months off software services. Shoot me an email, mike@operto.com. I'll connect you with somebody on our team who can kind of, explore your use case and help you create like a really fantastic, digitally supported guest journey. You can also check out operto.com. And with that, I will kick it back to Julie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. This is really, really great content. And, I just love the whole technology evolution that we are starting to see come through this space. I think there are a lot of guests out there who really want to have access to things like this at their fingertips. They want to be able to plan their trip ahead of time, especially if they're only in town for a few days. And here in Summit County, we see a lot of longer stays, but we also see a huge number of quick trips, 2 and 3 night stays, people coming up from Denver just for the weekend. And a lot of folks who come up from Denver probably come up here a lot, so they know their way around pretty well. But there might be some who have never been up here before and are just new to the area. So being able to provide that information before check-in is a really big deal. And I know that's something that a lot of our property managers try to do through email, but I think having something like an app that guests can download, especially when you have remote check-in and like you were mentioning the different types of maintenance issues or like the tour of the unit, things like that, there's so many of us at this point who never even see our guests face to face. The guests go through the remote check-in process. We don't have that chance to meet them and do a walkthrough. So I think that's really fantastic. Really a fantastic opportunity.
And one thing actually just that you mentioned there, which I should have mentioned, is our tool and like a lot of the other tools in the industry, there's options to use a web app instead of a native app. So ours is a web app. The guest doesn't need to download anything. If you're like my partner, for example, like she refuses to download any new app, even if it's something incredibly important. Oftentimes in hospitality, we see like single-digit percentage download rates for apps. People don't want to download an app, so use a web app so they don't have to download anything. They just go to URL.
Yeah, that's awesome too. I've got kids, and anybody who has kids here in Colorado has probably been to Great Wolf Lodge down in Colorado Springs, and they have an app. And I only download it when we go to Great Wolf Lodge, and the minute we check out, that thing is off my phone because I just don't need stuff taking up extra space. So I
Yeah.
like the web app version also. That's really, really great. So, my big takeaways today are get that tech out there, guys. Get in front of your guests, get them the information that they need before they arrive into town. Make sure they have access to stuff. And if you're still sending pre-arrival emails and you decide to, go with something like Operto for your guests, it's just another really great way to stay in touch with people. So I love it. Does anybody have any questions for Mike or for me from the property management side of the industry? I know I haven't been in the industry for a couple of years now as the executive director for SaveRM, but I can kind of relate on some of these things. All right, I don't see anybody jumping in here. So I think the one question I have is, you did talk about the in-unit binders and how those are sort of going the way of the dinosaur, right? They're a lot to maintain, they're a lot to handle. I think there are some folks out there who might want to keep a foot on both sides, right? They might want to
Yep.
still have that in-unit binder. Do you think it would be valuable to have something like that where maybe it's really light content and then all of the big stuff, the stuff that changes, would live like in an app? Do you think that's sort of the kind of the intermediate step?
Yeah, I mean, if you can cover off the best of both worlds, then for sure. I mean, there will be a segment of travelers, like, if you have someone that's 80 years old staying with you, then they're probably going to be more comfortable with a physical guidebook. So if you can maintain both, then great. The challenge is really just comes in maintaining it. And if you want to promote things and upsells, and it's a piece of paper. It's just way more limited than what an app can do. So, but I definitely wouldn't say take it out of your units. And the other thing is, with tools, like if you're building all this content digitally, then some tools you can just like export it or save it as a PDF. Others, you can just you're building the content anyway, so you just kind of like cut and paste it, put it in a document. Yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong with maintaining both. It's really just like there's so much value in getting the information into your guests' hands as soon as they book. So that's really the biggest limitation of those physical guidebooks, along with just the difficulty of maintaining them. Like I've stayed somewhere where they had like restaurant recommendations, and then I looked at the restaurant and it didn't exist anymore. Like it had closed down. So if you are going to use those, just make sure that you're maintaining them.
Yeah, I like that. And I also like the idea of just giving folks a little bit of a heads up before they arrive. One of the things that we talk about a lot is bounce backs, right? Anybody who books through an online travel option and then ends up coming to stay in your property, you might not have as much pre-arrival communication with that person as you would with somebody who booked directly. So for those folks who maybe book through another source, what do you think is the best way to get this information to them? Can we just share the information through the platform that they booked, or do you think it's something where we have a QR code on a flyer in the unit or on the back of the door or something like that?
Yeah, there's definitely, so the goal is to get it into the hands of your guests, as many guests as possible, as soon as possible before they arrive. If they are booking through a specific channel, there's always means to communicate with guests. You may not have their direct contact information, but oftentimes the OTAs, they'll give you that like masked email address that you can still communicate to. And then, if you're using like a guest app or a guest portal or whatever the case may be it ours or someone else's, have information in the unit that says like, hey, like make sure you check out your guest app, looking for emails or whatever. QR code's another great way. You can have your QR code link out to the actual like guest application that you're using. So it's kind of like a multi-pronged approach to like get people to use your content, because especially if you're making revenue off of it, then you want to make sure that everybody's using it as much as possible.
Awesome. I love it. Well, gosh, Mike, thank you so much for your time today. I'm just checking to see if I have any other questions written down here, and I don't have any on my list. I don't see any others from our friends attending today, but if you do have any questions and you want to follow up with either Mike or me, we've got email addresses dropped here in the chat. So you'll see Mike@operto.com. Check in with him if you've got the techie questions. If you have industry related questions or local related questions about things going on here in Summit County, message me at the info@savrm.org address, and we'll take care of you guys. So thank you so much again for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it. Rent Responsibly, Abby, Lindsay, thanks for setting this up for us. We appreciate you guys. And everybody have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.